This time last year, the Indiana Pacers were gearing up for a run to the NBA Finals. To this season, only winning 19 games. Let that sink in. The Indiana Pacers literally went from one of the best to one of the worst. But this ain't a full rebuild. The question we're going to talk about today is we're going to continue doing our offseason outlooks for every team that did not make the playoffs or the play-in this year. We're going to talk about the Indiana Pacers. And with Tyrese Haliburton coming back and a potential top draft pick, what big decisions are looming for the Indiana Pacers? And can they be right back where they were a season ago this time next year? We're talking about all that plus more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And man, from finals to free fall, right? That's really the storyline of the Indiana Pacers this season. And while it was kind of expected, right? Like the Indiana Pacers set themselves up to be in this position to be able to, add to their team when they got their draft pick back. It was clear that they were gunning towards not a rebuild, but be using this season for a chance to retool, right? And that's really what it came down to. The Pacers came into this season and were very clear. They wanted to evaluate Ben Mathurin and see what did Ben Mathurin do with an opportunity now to maybe even be the team's go-to scorer. Rick Carlisle talked very early on in the season about the opportunity that was presented to Ben Mathurin because of this injury to Tyrese Haliburton, and the fact that the team, after losing Tyrese Haliburton to injury, Miles Turner decided to sign with the Milwaukee Bucks. All of that stuff ended up happening, and so now you were sitting in a place where it was just about evaluations for the Indiana Pacers. I don't think the Pacers, were coming into the season expected to only win, 19 games, but I do think that they realized very early on, like, hey, if we're not good enough, right? Like, we can maximize our draft potential. The 2026 draft is going to be very deep, and for what it's worth, they took advantage of it. It worked out for the Indiana Pacers. Now, we'll talk about the specific protections on that pick, right? But, you look at Ben Mathurin and the season that he had and the opportunity that he had, playing 28 games for the Indiana Pacers this season, only playing 54 total. He averaged 17.8 points per game, which was a career high for him, 43% shooting from the field, and a career high 37% shooting from three during his time with the Indiana Pacers this season. But apparently the Pacers were not impressed enough. They still decided to trade him. They sent him in a midseason trade to the Los Angeles Clippers. They got Zubac back for it, and they got a big that they're going to need once Tyrese Haliburton is back. And so a lot of the teams in this area, right, we've talked a lot about the direction or the lack thereof of the direction for the team. This Pacer team actually has a direction. Now, there's questions on how good is Tyrese Haliburton going to be coming back, right? One thing with him tearing his Achilles, we knew he wasn't going to be back this season. You got Jason Tatum, who attacked his rehab. Shout out to him. He's back on a playoff run. And so the Pacers are definitely hoping that Tyrese Haliburton is going to come right back into this team and be able to, lift them back up to basically where they were last season. And so they're going to have to make some tough decisions on the roster. That's what this is. It's not that the Pacers don't have a path forward. I actually think they have a pretty damn good path forward, to be 100% honest with you. It's more so about how do they move forward, right? So you look at it. Let's look at the Pacers' core players and the players that are probably safe on this roster. Tyrese Haliburton, safe. Pascal Siakam, safe. Zubac, safe. Nembhard, safe. Aaron Nesmith, safe. TJ McConnell, I would say safe. Obi Toppin, probably safe, right? So you have those core players that I would say that are probably safe from being traded, bar a absolute superstar wanting to come to this team. Like if Giannis says, hey, listen, not only do I want to trade from the Bucks, I want to go and team up with Tyrese Haliburton. Could Pascal be traded in a move like that? Probably, right? But I think that those core players, barring anything kind of unexpected and a superstar becoming available, they're going to be safe. Zubac was the big acquisition this year. I think that he's definitely safe because that's exactly what you need. That was a move that was more built around setting yourself up once Tyrese Haliburton is back, more so than it was to save them anything this season. Pascal Siakam has been the best player on the Pacers, and been a great soldier for them. Somebody who's been well coached, stands up, does some things that they need to. So there's not even any urgency from the Pacers to think about trading any of those core 7 players that I just named. Haliburton, Siakam, Zubac, Nembhard, Naismith, TJ McConnell, Naismith, whatever, and Obi Toppin. Those are the players that are probably safe. I don't think that the Pacers really look to have any urgency of moving those players, again, unless a a superstar level player comes available, and then things could be open, right? And now you look at TJ McConnell's age at 34. I think he's a great veteran in that locker room. He does so much of what they needed to do. So then let's look at the role players. Which role player's future is not necessarily safe for the Pacers? Ben Shepherd, Jay Huff, Johnny Furphy, Quentin Jackson, Micah Potter, right? Those are the role players that are on this Pacers team, right? And so I think when you look at this, if you're looking at this bunch, Shepherd's probably the one that's the most safe to stay with that. He played significant minutes, in the playoff run in 2025. He's a low usage 3-and-D player that just makes sense for that. Huff played all 82 games for the season as well. And, I don't think that he made himself, you can look at him and say, oh my God, you cannot move on from this guy. But at the same time, I think his ability to block shots, he can hit some threes. We've seen him throw down some absolutely nasty dunks. I think he's going to be safe in this one as well. Furphy's a former first-round pick, that he did tear his ACL, so I don't think they're going to cut him while he's rehabbing. I think they're going to be locked into that. And then you have Jackson and Potter, who I think, they got into play because the Pacers were shorthanded this season. Jackson is an absolute bucket getter at times, and I do think Potter has such a well-rounded game for a big man that you want to see what that looks like with Tyrese Haliburton as well, right? So I have the trade candidates on this Pacers team being Jarace Walker and Cam Jones. I think those are the most likely players to be, if they're going to make any type of trades and mobility in that, I think that's going to happen, right? So you got to look at that part when it comes down to it. Jarace Walker as well, he's a free agent at the end of the season, and I think that such a lengthy extension could be to why he's probably going to be moved as well. So that's the players that I think if there's going to be any movement on the roster, those are going to be the players that's moved. I think a lot of the core is going to be staying here, right? So now let's look at the other situation for the Pacers, right? We like to look at the cap situation for every team that we talk about here. And the Pacers, for a 19-win team, have a for most 19-win teams, I would say that it's a bad situation. But because we know that they were missing Tyrese Haliburton, and this team is going to hopefully look completely different with Tyrese Haliburton back. You have a full season of Zubac on the team as well. I'm not going to ding them for their situation money-wise. They still are $7 million below the first tax apron. With that said, the only player that they have that has any type of option is Micah Potter with a team option on that for $2.8 million. So their roster's pretty much locked in, right? They have a first-round pick, more on that coming, but they're not. It's not like they're dangling into the area of being into the second tax apron. This is one of the teams that has a mandate. They don't like to pay the luxury tax. They should be able to avoid paying the luxury tax this year. And if they need some wiggle room, they cannot pick up the option on Potter. They can try to trade some other players, to do some of those players that I mentioned. They could try to trade a number of those players and see if a team's going to be willing to absorb them into their exception or whatever it is. So the Pacers don't have a bad cap situation for where they are. Again, this all hinges on Tyrese Haliburton and how quickly he can get back to looking like him, right? But for a team that just reset their roster, they took a gap year after letting Miles Turner go, evaluating, trading Ben Mathurin, getting Zubac back. They took a gap year, but they came out of that gap year, I think, with Zubac, who's really good. He's going to be that starting center. You also have Huff, who's going to be able to be there to back him up. And so I don't think they're in a bad situation at all for that. Their financial situation, yeah, they're tight on the cap, but because so much of their roster, especially, playing off Tyrese Haliburton, was part of that run in 2024-25, I think they'll be fine there. Then let's get to the draft pick situation, because this is where things can get very interesting for the Indiana Pacers. They have one of the most unique protections that I've ever seen on a team, right? So with that said, they are in the draft lottery. They have a 52% chance to keep their top 4 protected pick, because it is top 4 protected. It's really weird protections on it to where it's top 4 protected. If it falls between 5 or 9, it goes to the Los Angeles Clippers. If it's after 9, if it's 10 or lower, they get to keep that pick as well. So they want to avoid it being 5 to 9. Now, when you look at their situation, they have a 56% chance to keep their pick, right? But because they are number 2, they can move 4 spots down. 4 teams could leapfrog them, and that could possibly push them down to number 5. In that case, then they're going to lose that pick, and that's the chance that they risk here, right? They knew what they were doing when they put that protection on the pick. If this pick does not convey, meaning that the Indiana Pacers get to keep this pick and it stays in the top 4, you got to look at it this way. Like, even if it goes 10 or below, you have a chance to add a lottery talent to this team that you're getting Tyrese Haliburton back. You're going to have a full season of Zubac. You have role players that help you go on an Eastern Conference championship run, right? All those type of things are there. But then let's look at this. The thing that makes it interesting in the flexibility that the Indiana Pacers have with this is that if it's in the top 4, you take that pick, you draft that player, and you keep it pushing. If it does happen to fall 10 or lower, right? Let's just say for some reason it falls 10 or lower, which I don't think there's really a chance it could fall 10 or lower now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I don't, because the most they can drop is 4 spots, so that's 6. So it's either they're going to be in the top 4, or it's going to go to the or it's going to go to the Los Angeles Clippers. So if it stays in the top 4, you get to add one of AJ DeBonta, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, or Caleb Wilson. You get to add one of those players to already returning Tyrese Haliburton. And while I get it, teenagers aren't necessarily going to turn your team around, but do you know what that does for future planning for this team? Do you know what that does for the future outlook for this team to be able to add a player like one of those guys potentially to this team? Which, let's be clear, Tyrese Haliburton has been in the league for 6-7 years now, but it's not like he's long in the tooth. We're not talking about a player that's in his 30s, right? That's just not the case here for them. So, you still have a lot of forward mobility for this team. So, I think that this is the Pacers in one of the best spots that a 19-win team could be. You got Tyrese Haliburton coming back. You added Zubac to your team. You have a system of role players and players that have played off Tyrese Haliburton. You already know. You don't have to ask about the chemistry there. The biggest question marks for the Pacers really becomes, A, do they keep their pick? Does that pick stay in the top 4? Do they get to keep their pick? 2, do they trade any other players on this team to try to add to this core? And then the biggest question mark for this team overall is, how good is Tyrese Haliburton in his first year back? That's really the biggest question here. What is the chance? How good is he back when it comes down to that? That's really what you're looking at. If he is still good and he comes back and he's able to attack it right away and look like the Tyrese Haliburton of old, this is a Pacers team that could be cooking right away. And you talk about adding a top 3 pick to that. And the benefit of the Pacers, too, is they own all their first-round picks outright. They own the 2027 own first, 2028. 2029 was traded to the Clippers, so there's that. 2030, they own their own first one. So they have a core already, you have your own draft assets, at least into next year's draft. So even if it does, for some reason, Tyrese Haliburton struggles this season, or you have injuries all over the board, you have another gap year or something like that, the future's still bright for this Pacers team. But it can go from bright to being shining if they stay in the top 4. We'll see. It'll be one of the more unlucky things that we've seen for that pick to stay between 5 or 9, and then it ends up going to the Los Angeles Clippers. But that we won't know until May 10th, which is draft lottery night. That's where we know exactly where everybody's picking. And we'll know if that pick is going to be going to the Clippers or if it's going to be staying with the Indiana Pacers. But overall, looking at the outlook for the Indiana Pacers, they sit in a very favorable position and spot. It just comes down to Tyrese Haliburton. All eyes are going to be on Tyrese Haliburton and how quickly does he return back to the player that he was. And if he does that, nobody's saying that. 26 years old, Tyrese Haliburton, last season 2024-25, 18 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 9.2 assists, 47% shooting from the field, 38% shooting from 3. He's a career 39% three-point shooter. He also averages still and a half per game as well, right? And doesn't really average a lot of turnovers, only 1.6 turnovers. So you're getting a high-usage point guard back that doesn't turn the ball over, that runs Rick Carlisle's system and gets that offense humming. He is the heart and the engine and the soul of that offense. And so because of that, this Indiana Pacers team could go from worst back to first next year, depending on how some things end up shaking out for them. So I'm very favorable in regards to the future of the Indiana Pacers. Can they get Cam Boozer? Do they get AJ DeBonta? Do they get Darren Peterson? Do they walk away with Wilson, right? Caleb Wilson. That's all the questions that we have here. But I think overall, the Indiana Pacers are going to be one of the most interesting teams heading into this offseason because of everything that's in front of them. So I got to ask you this one. Are the Pacers one move away from being right back? Or do you think they're going to have to retool yet again? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. You can follow us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBACentralPod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything basketball related, and I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making an episode. It won't be tomorrow, though. I got some stuff going on, so I'll probably see y'all Sunday. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.